So next, we're going to take a look at a pretty niche use case, but also a really fun visual use case for ChatGPT. We're going to generate mind maps. So ChatGPT can't directly generate a visual mind map like you see here, but this tool is called markmap.js.org, markmap, generates mind maps based off of Markdown syntax. So it's super easy to do. There's an example here on the left, but I'm actually going to just do an even simpler example. If I want to have some mind map for any sort of hierarchy-based structure, so any outline, any list of concepts, maybe for this course. So I could do a mind map using headings. So this is the syntax. I could do course, content. And then I have my next level, which is 2 headings, so 2 hash symbols. And then I can have the intro section. And then I could have another section called prompt engineering, for example. And then within each of these categories, I then can define a different level of nesting. So the third tier down would have 3 levels of headings, so 3 hash symbols. And I could have, welcome. And then maybe we also have, installation. And then under prompt engineering, we have basic concepts for prompt engineering, like the prompt formula. And then we'll put one more thing under prompt engineering. How about, what's another prompt tactic we've learned? How about act as prompting? Anyway, this syntax generates the mind map you can see over here. So this is a tool someone has built on top of Markdown. We have to follow these rules to make the mind map. But we can use ChatGPT to generate way more complex mind maps if we tell it about this syntax. So this is an example where we probably would want to use one or few shot prompting, because I can't really just tell it, generate me a Markdown mind map. It's not going to know the pattern. This is not something that is, generic Markdown. This syntax is Markdown, but it probably would try generating a nested bullet point list maybe. So what we need to do is just tell it, this is the format we want. So that's exactly what I'll do. I'll say, generate me a mind map, or you are a mind map creating assistant, or something like that. We'll come back to this. But then I'm going to provide it an example. The mind map tool I'm using expects mind maps in this Markdown format. Here is an example for a mind map of, what should we do? Should we just use this example? Sure, we'll call this a mind map of a ChatGPT course curriculum. And then I'll give it this here. And then down below, I'll say generate a mind map for all of the concepts. What should we do? All the concepts a entry-level developer should learn. Entry-level web developer. Using the above syntax. Okay. So we may want to tweak this a bit, but here is what I want it to do. Generate me a mind map according to the format below. The mind map tool I'm using, oops, I misspelled accepts. I think I meant to say accepts mind maps in this Markdown format. Here's an example for a mind map of a ChatGPT course curriculum. And then here's the example. Then I'm going to tell it, use that format to generate me a mind map using that syntax for all of the concepts an entry-level web developer should learn. And let's see if it can figure it out. Okay, so it's generating me quite a bit. I'll be back when it's done. It's probably going to be a long one. Okay, it finished up. So now what I can do is copy this out of here and head over to my Markdown document, or to this tool, get rid of the text at the beginning. And here is my mind map. Can I shrink this down? How do I view just the map? Oh no. Okay, here we go. It may be a pretty big map, as you can see here, of all these different concepts. You've got to learn CSS. And within CSS, there's the intro, there's syntax, selectors, box model, layout. It's pretty good. However, one thing I'm noticing, it only went 3 levels deep. And this is an example of one of the possible downfalls of using a few shot or one shot prompting approach, where it's adhering too much to my example because the example I gave it had exactly 3 levels. So I have a hunch that if I had given it an example where I had a 4th level in here, so we have course welcome, installation, maybe I'll rewrite this, I'll just fast forward. All right, so I drafted a more nested example that I can use. And instead of just the 3-tiered system, I now have up to 5 tiers. Just to give it a more complex example, this is what it looks like, but it doesn't really matter. This is purely to act as an example. So it shows, an OpenAI course where there's a tier generating text, generating images. Within generating text, we have another tier, and then within that, we have another tier. And anyway, it doesn't really matter what I put in there. It should make some sense. But I have a feeling now, if I provide this as my example, that it's going to give me a better result, or at least a more nested result. So let's see. That finished up. Let's copy it and see what it actually looks like. Get rid of that at the beginning. Okay. And it is definitely more nested now, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, at least 4 levels, looks like 5 levels in our nested hierarchy. So it took to heart my example, which is great that we can do that. You just have to be careful with the examples you provide because sometimes it will adhere too closely. But what I could also have just said most likely is create a mind map with between 4 and 6 levels of nesting. And it probably could have figured that out too. Anyway, this is a fun one, an example both of working with Markdown, but also of, in this case, one-shot prompting, showing it a format that it doesn't know about, but it's picking up, no problem. Cool stuff. Maybe it's not the most useful of all the prompts, but it's a fun one and it illustrates a lot of the concepts we've learned so far.